Meanwhile, viewers, in more news, we're learning that UN Security Council has lifted sanctions on Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa and Interior Minister Anas Khattab ahead of al-Sharaa's visit to the White House. 14 of 15 UNSC members voted in favor. The delisting lifts previous ISIL and al-Qaeda related sanctions, including asset freezes and an arms embargo, though much of it was symbolic since al-Sharaa's travel had been routinely waived. US lawmakers have welcomed the move, but note that the US Congress must act to remove remaining sanctions under the Caesar Act. The US has described the move as signaling a new era in Syria after the ouster of Bashar al-Assad, while Syrian officials thanked international supporters. Listen in to what Mike Waltz, US Ambassador to the United Nations, had to say.
Colleagues, with the adoption of this text, the Council is sending a strong political signal that recognizes Syria is in a new era since Assad and his associates were toppled in December 2024.
Some diplomats have called it key for Syria's economic recovery, though China has criticized the vote for sidelining members' views. Fu Kong, Chinese ambassador to the United Nations, and Vasily Nebenzia, Russian ambassador to the UN, had different viewpoints regarding the sanctions. Listen in.
案的是，刚刚付诸表决的决议草案未能体现上述原则和精神，中方不得不投下弃权票。一段时间以来，安理会成员就决议草案进行了多轮磋商，本着对叙利亚和叙利亚人民负责的态度，中方积极参与磋商进程，同不少成员一道对反恐问题。 特别是继续外国恐怖作战分子问题，表达合理关切，并提出不少建设性的修改建议。
Военного присутствия израильских сил серьезным фактором, препятствующим долгосрочной стабилизации обстановки в различных частях САР, остается широкий спектр террористических угроз, включая исходящие от ИГИЛ, Аль-Каиды и иностранных террористов-боевиков.
Joining us on the broadcast is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, International Affairs expert from Singapore. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. There's a meeting on the 10th of November that will take place between Donald Trump and Ahmad al-Sharaa at the White House. The US, of course, bringing about a UNSC resolution to lift the sanctions against him. China has come out to criticize the vote. China has stated that it's abstained from this vote. And that multiple rounds of consultations were held, but some viewpoints were not factored in. Russia too has expressed concerns regarding counterterrorism efforts in Syria itself. Meanwhile, there are a lot of experts that are pointing out the double standards of what's taking place at the moment, because back when Ahmad al-Sharaa was known as al-Julani, he was not just sanctioned by the US, he was wanted by the US as well. There is still a Twitter post that is up till date from the US State Department declaring this as well. What do you make of what's taken place, and of course, what are your expectations from the upcoming meeting?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Ahmad al-Sharaa as Jolani was a member of a terrorist group. In fact, he led that organization called HTS. Yes. He broke away from Islamic State. He aligned himself with al-Qaeda in the past, but today he has abandoned that terrorism and extremism, although the security and intelligence services of the world continue to watch how Ahmad al-Sharaa is treating the Christians, the Druze, the Shiites. So there is some concern on the part of Russia and China because the United States and the European countries have built a very close relationship with Syria under Ahmad al-Sharaa. One would expect that Ahmad al-Sharaa will totally abandon extremism, will not impose Sharia law, because if he does that, certainly other communities will have no faith in him. And of course, he will disband HTS that still has foreign terrorist fighters from Asia, Africa, Middle East, and the West, especially Europe, serving in its rank and file. The US has taken a very bold step to work with Ahmad al-Sharaa, and we all hope that the United States will succeed in that endeavor to restore peace and stability and security in Syria and in the region.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates. Syria has expressed gratitude to Washington and the UN Security Council members after the US-backed resolution lifted sanctions on President Ahmad al-Sharaa ahead of his upcoming White House visit. Foreign Minister Asad al-Shaibani has thanked the United States and other friendly nations for their support, stating that the vote demonstrates recognition of Syria's progress. The ministry also acknowledges that the Security Council and its efforts, calling the decision a reflection of increasing trust in the country's new leadership. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has hailed the job done by Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa at their White House meeting. Trump is scheduled to host the Syrian president on Monday, that's the 10th of November next week. This will be the first visit by a Syrian leader to the White House in over 80 years and signifies a potential major shift in US-Syria relations. The talks between the leaders are expected to focus on post-war reconstruction, easing US sanctions on Syria, and a potential agreement for Syria to join the US-led coalition against the Islamic State. The air-based talks are expected to feature during the leaders' meeting as the US is preparing to establish a military presence at an airbase in Damascus to monitor a potential security pact between Syria and Israel. Now, ahead of the meeting, US President has stated that he gets along with the Syrian leader very well. Listen in to what he had to say.
Well, we're going to meet, and I think he's doing a very good job. It's a tough neighborhood, and he's a tough guy, but I got along with him very well, and a lot of progress has been made with Syria. That's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made. You know, we took the sanctions off at the request of Turkey, at the request of actually Israel.
Still with us on the broadcast is Professor Rohan Gunaratne. Interesting statement, interesting points of conversation. Of course, the sanctions are one thing that Syria is looking for the United States to lift. The Caesar sanctions, to be very specific, it's looking at renewed economic growth in the aftermath of the civil war that has plagued it for more than a decade now. US, of course, is on the other hand looking at establishing an airbase in Damascus. How do you think Ahmad al-Sharaa will sort of balance this, considering the fact that he's recently met Vladimir Putin? There is still a considerable presence of Russians in Syria, whether it's the Khmeimim air base or the Tartus naval base as well.
Syria has clearly shifted its alliances from Iran, Russia, and China. It has moved towards the West because Ahmad al-Sharaa believes that by working with the West, he can secure his country, he can get more investment, and also he believes that he can have peace with Israel because Israel is today the regional superpower. And President Trump is doing his best to build a relationship between Syria and Israel by having that US base in Damascus. So I personally believe that what is commendable is that the shift from extremism, exclusivism, violence, and terrorism on the part of Ahmad al-Sharaa into becoming a leader, a political leader that is going to work with all the communities, all faiths, so that there can be stability and security in Syria. It's a challenge. It is something that many people believe may not succeed, but I think that we should all do our best to wish the US the very best as it tries to get Syria to become a country that doesn't have the terrorist label anymore. I think the UN sanctions removal, the US sanction removal, all this is so important to have a vibrant Syria that will become democratic and will be prosperous.
Indeed, you've spoken of Israel. We've recently seen when al-Sharaa went to the United States for the UNGA, he'd ruled out joining the Abraham Accords, but he'd not say much about the security framework that the US is trying to broker between Israel and Syria. Could we then expect some major announcement with regards to the security framework by Trump in the aftermath of this meeting?
Certainly, because Ahmad al-Sharaa is facing a lot of pressure from the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the group that he is leading, and that group is full of terrorists and extremists and jihadists. So he's under pressure not to agree to the Abraham Accords. He's under pressure not to agree to a US base in Damascus. He's under pressure not to attack Israel. So Ahmad al-Sharaa is managing the situation with exceptional difficulty, but he is able to do it because he himself was a part of the ISIS or the Islamic State. He was appointed by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as the ISIS representative to Syria, and he later aligned himself with Al-Qaeda and even had communications with Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the Al-Qaeda leader. So he has the strength, the gravitas, the history, the experience to ensure that HTS terrorists and fighters, they disarm and they become citizens, or they abandon their violence and embrace peace. So he has a major task. He's doing a balancing act.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World.